Hi everybody. Well, not as simple as that, wouldn't it be lovely? Yeah, so that's the title of my talk today is Cannabis and Other Vices. How do we change societal attitudes? Well, let's see. Well, humans aren't perfect for a start, and we've all got our bad habits. But so they call some of those bad habits vices, and that includes the recreational drugs. So let's have a look at what the definition of a vice is. Immoral or wicked behaviour, a moral fault or weakness in someone's character, illegal or immoral activities, especially involving sex, drugs, etc. Okay, so let's get this straight. So by definition, the use of recreational drugs is a vice. Therefore, it's immoral, shows a weakness of character, and often involves breaking the law. And here's where it gets interesting though, if I can ever scroll. I changed the thing on my mouse so that it keeps staying in the same spot all the time, and now I can't get used to it. so I'm thinking, how do I scroll? And I usually talk off the cuff. It's not very often I actually write down a talk. But anyway, and now I've scrolled too far. I'll get there in a minute. Yeah, so here, well, hopefully it'll get interesting if I can ever work this thing out. That's got it. Yeah. So if it's illegal, then the use of it is a vice. So just using a recreational drug is a vice. But if the drug is legal, then it's only a vice if you abuse it. You know, like, it's sort of a bit inconsistent, really, isn't it? I mean, on the one hand, one thing's a vice, and on the other hand, it's not. And so you sort of think, okay, well, maybe it's because these drugs do so much damage. Well, alcohol causes far more harm to the user and to others than all the other drugs put together. And of course, cannabis can kill no one, so it can't be that. In fact, all the illegal drugs have more medical uses than alcohol, with far superior safety profiles. So it's just wrong, isn't it? You know, well, what's wrong about it? Okay, I'm going to ask you guys, what's wrong with recreational drug use?
The laws against nothing. It's expensive.
That's a good one. So, yeah, but we're in a room of people that we're fairly accepting of it. You know, would you say the same thing if I said, well, what's wrong with cigarette smoking?
It's unhealthy.
We're all going to die.
So, well, that's what a lot of people say about recreational drug use, isn't it? So, and that is actually one of the answers. Recreational drug use is generally unhealthy. We'll agree. You know, but then so is boxing. So is every other contact sport. Bull riding, but we don't call that a vice, do we? So, you know, really? Is it just because it's unhealthy?
I bet the bulls don't get addicted.
I know. I mean, we don't all eat healthily and we don't all exercise, but it's not considered a vice or to be morally wrong if we do that, is it? So, so the next argument, it's not natural to be stoned. Therefore, it's wrong. But many prescribed medications make you stoned. You've got the antidepressants, the antipsychotics, the anti-epileptics, and of course you've got, you know, morphine and the other narcotics. And so apparently it's okay to be stoned if the doctor says you can be stoned. So, you know, we smell another inconsistency here. So, okay, and listen, meditating, you know, listening to music, even reading, they can all transport you to a different headspace, which isn't that what being stoned is? It's a different headspace, different way of viewing the world. But none of them are considered wrong. So I think there's many negative results from recreational drug taking. It wastes your life and squanders your talents. It makes you commit crimes and lose your values. Well, there's a bit of truth to that, I suppose, but let's look a little bit closer. For a start, those affected are only the minority. Between 8 to 10% of the population have the unfortunate ability to get addicted to something. And that can be to many things, not just drugs. And yet again, alcohol outstrips all of these in the damage done, and yet it remains legal and therefore technically not wrong. People accept someone who is alcohol impaired, especially in a social setting. They don't see them as immoral. Their behaviour might not be optimal, but it's not considered immoral. So why are recreational drugs considered wrong within the same social setting? Oh, okay, so by using drugs, you might become addicted and therefore lose autonomy. No one's saying that's a good thing, as the collateral damage from addiction can be huge. But is it morally wrong? Much of that damage doesn't come from the drugs themselves, but the consequences from their illegality and the negative and moralistic way in which they're viewed. Hypocrisy reigns supreme for those who decide the fate of drug addicts as they quaff their 3 scotches a night. And if you think about this, you also lose autonomy when you join the military. But certainly no one thinks that has been morally wrong, or perhaps some do, if you're a pacifist. And, and finally, it's wrong to gain pleasure by these artificial means. Though there are many reasons other than simply pleasure as to why people use recreational drugs. What do you think some of the reasons are that people use recreational drugs? Stuck with you?
Healing.
Pleasure.
Sorry?
Pleasure.
Pleasure?
It's fun.
Escape.
It's fun, escape, all of those things. Gee, that sounds really wrong, doesn't it? Really immoral sort of behaviour. So some people will use drugs to escape pain. So there's lots of reasons. And again you've got to compare it to alcohol. Where the pleasure of becoming drunk is positively lauded. Yet the worst behaviour I've ever seen is in, of you people who are drunk. And leaving aside the question of morality for a moment, we've got to look at why people take recreational drugs. So bottom line, they're fulfilling a need that they can't or they don't want to fulfil anywhere else. The world's crap. And various forms of escape seem essential these days. And it has been proven that the worse the environment, the more likely the drug use will increase. Give people a loving, supportive environment and drug use naturally decreases as their needs are met elsewhere. Have you guys heard of the rat park experiment? So, for those who haven't, it's where they took 2 different environments for these rats and they put one lot in just a barren cage. There was food, water, that was it. Nothing for them to do, no extra food, just basics. And in the other one, they made it like a rat theme park. It had everything, all the things that a rat could possibly enjoy. It had it. But in there, they put a plain water and a water that was laced with heroin. And then after a certain amount of time, what actually happened is that all the rats that weren't in Rat Park, that were in the other one, died because they all became horribly addicted to the heroin-laced water. However, the rats that were in Rat Park, they all went and tried the heroin-laced water, and occasionally they'd go back and drink a bit of it, but none of them got addicted, and none of them died from it. And the only difference was their environment. And so I think, when we want to look at answers, if we want to change societal attitudes, we need to have a look at why people take recreational drugs. And for the vast majority of young people, it's to escape a very uncertain future. I mean, the kids of today don't even know if their world's going to be here tomorrow. We thought we had it bad, but wow, it's nothing. And I mean, they're not taught to think, now anymore, so they just have to follow what's being said. It's just totally horrible. So no wonder so many of them, want something that's easy and pleasurable. And again, if other things are provided for them. So, I mean, that's the big answer, isn't it? The big answer is to change society, is to go back to, a caring, compassionate country like we used to be. So I'd say the first thing that we could do ourselves is to call out the hypocrisy whenever you hear it. Don't let people get away with it. Because it's totally hypocritical. That alcohol is the one that's legal, that causes the most damage, And we're still fighting to get the safest herbal medicine in the world legalised for everyone. So I think, yeah, just you never stop calling out the hypocrisy. You know, the truth's the truth. And I know that there's lots of government people that like to change that, but the truth is still the truth. So the constant wearing away of prejudice is with the truth. And that's why we've actually got medical cannabis available, isn't it? Because for several years, we just wore away at their prejudice until they finally got to see that at least as far as medically concerned, it was not the big baddie that they thought it was. And, you know, people are starting to change where cannabis is concerned. It's, I was at the airport not long ago and I was smoking my joint because, you know, legal prescription, and someone else was having a vape. And we sort of exchanged a smile and a bit of a giggle, and I said, oh, it's legal, yeah. And all the other people there were probably about another half a dozen people, all suddenly started smiling and laughing and chatting to us. And I thought, that's the power of cannabis. You know, you wouldn't get that happen sort of like, you know, in any other situation. So, you know, the stigma really is going as far as cannabis is concerned. No one cared. Yeah, there was no judgment, there was no one saying, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. They were all really accepting of it, and it actually changed the whole atmosphere. Everyone was really cheerful and happy. So how can that be wrong? Well, this is the thing, how can it be wrong? So, you know, how did it come to be that these particular substances have been demonised? You know, why did it become morally wrong? Has anyone ever thought about that? Why? Why did it become morally wrong? So you've got to sort of really go way back in history. And the further you go back, it's really quite interesting because there's really two main reasons why certain substances were banned. And this is ancient civilizations and ancient tribes. Is that those who became addicted to the drug, say in China, opium, whatever, they became a bit of a problem to society, so something had to be done. Basically, they weren't really worried about them, they were worried about their effect on other people, I suppose. And also, in civilisations where that happened, the situation was quite similar to what we have today, where we have a small, rich elite, we have a variable middle class, and we have a huge lower class that's completely enslaved and disenfranchised. So, you know, and so therefore the people in power decide that they don't want this element and they ban that particular substance. So that's one of the reasons. And the other one is, this is in the, you know, especially with psychedelics and things like that, is that it was considered something that only those who were spiritually aware, like the shamans or religion, you know, religion is a very big, well, when we trace it back, that's really it. You know, so it wasn't considered that the common person should be allowed to experience these mind-altering experiences, you know, that it should be just the shamans or the priests or whatever. And so when you trace it back, it was religion, it was whoever it was that said to us that recreational drug is morally wrong. So, and that has carried down through the ages. Though, I mean, as you sort of go down, like, then people sort of don't worry about it anymore, and then things are fine. And what's interesting, you know, that the reason that they're banning them is not because of health. It's always some other reason, which is, I think, quite interesting. And so until we get to the mid-19th century, and through medieval times and all of that, where it wasn't illegal or anything, but neither were there any problems. And this is, you know, I mean, people were able to get things like opium and cannabis, you know, hashish and stuff like that, you know, because of the British influence in China and India and stuff. So certainly those drugs were around and available in the 19th century, but it was never a problem. So why then did they go and ban opium? Well, it was a bit of a problem in China, but it was again when their culture became more autocratic. And so the richer the elite and the more powerful the elite, it seems, the less they want the poor people to enjoy what they can enjoy. Seems to be quite an interesting fact, that. But really it was all to do with the trade between Britain and China. The Opium Wars were nothing to do with people's health and them being able to access opium or anything. It was simply to do with trade. And so they got around to banning opium, and then they went and banned it in the United States, but only smoking opium. They didn't ban the medical forms of opium. So the only people that it affected were the Chinese in Chinatown, and their opium smoking dens and things like this. And so because they weren't able to get their opium, they then had to go and source morphine and heroin. We're starting to hear some familiar sort of stories here. So the reason that people started to take morphine and heroin in the States was because the Chinese couldn't get their smoking opium. So that's how that illegal trade started. And then we go on, and then they discovered the wonders of things like cocaine and the psychedelics and stuff like that. And so cocaine, actually I can't remember when that one was banned, but again, it was never ever a problem even before it was banned. It was only ever amongst the elite. So you sort of have to wonder. And so then of course we get to, my most favourite historical story of Prohibition is the Prohibition of cannabis. And who here is familiar with the story of the Prohibition of cannabis? Everybody? Who doesn't know?
It was a racist thing, right?
Well, partially a racist thing, yep. But mainly it was because they wanted to destroy the hemp industry. It had made a comeback because they'd managed to mechanise its harvest. They'd invented the decorticator, and they'd managed to mechanise the harvest of hemp. And Popular Mechanics wrote it up as a new $6 billion crop for America. And DuPont and Hearst and his cronies weren't too thrilled with that because DuPont had just patented his process for nylon, and Hearst had patented his process for making paper from wood pulp. So they weren't really interested in hemp making a comeback. And then you add to that Anslinger, the FBI guy, who didn't have much to do once alcohol prohibition ended, and there's another interesting story. And we're talking about, prohibiting substances. Couldn't, had to give the poor buggers something through the Depression, didn't they? But anyway, so back to the prohibition of hemp. And so Anslinger, and he's the one that hated the Negroes and the Mexicans and stuff. And they made this connection between the stuff that the Mexicans were smoking and the musicians were smoking in New Orleans and places, and decided that this would be a useful tool in getting hemp banned altogether, and they succeeded quite well against the advice of the American AMA, and they even had to call it something new. And this is why you'll find that around Nimbin we don't really like the word marijuana, because it's a prohibitionist term. It doesn't really even mean anything. It's a bastardisation of some Mexican word that means dogweed or something. So it doesn't even mean cannabis. And that was...
Hey!
Oh my God, I've gone. And that was because they didn't want the average person to realise that the harmless-looking tincture in their medicine cabinet was actually cannabis.
Well, a lot of people who voted on it didn't even know marijuana was cannabis.
That's exactly
but they still
right.
voted on it.
Yep.
They didn't even know.
Didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of like, and that's why we hate the word marijuana so much, is because, it was really just invented as a way of sort of, and I mean, that's a classic story, isn't it, of why recreational drugs have been prohibited. Now, the very interesting thing about it, though, is that they're all painkillers. All the recreational drugs are also painkillers. Now, I find that very interesting. There's a lot of other medicinal plants that we're allowed to grow. We can grow foxglove. That's got digitalis in it that treats the heart. We can grow that in our garden. And that's fine, not a problem. So why can't we grow cannabis that doesn't kill anyone? Why can't we grow opium? Why can't we grow poppies? these are just plants that grow. What is it? What happened that governments think they can legislate plants? And again, if we want to change societal attitudes, we've got to go back to asking these questions. Like, who gave doctors the right to control your pain? Who said it was okay? So the government. Okay, who gave the government the right to control your pain?
The people.
Okay, so isn't it about time the people realise what they've done? Is that they have taken pain relief away from the average person. You have to be controlled by the government if you want pain relief. Now, how did we ever get into that situation? But that's where we are. And now we have legislation where doctors must obey government guidelines or they will be struck off. Are you aware that that legislation has been passed?
Yeah.
So doctors in Australia now have no autonomy. Just thought I'd throw that bit in, just so you realise. Medicine in Australia no longer exists in the
It's
same
like the
form.
prescription of codeine now. Like that's an example. Like
That
you
is a
can't- you
classic
can't
example.
Even get codeine.
Can't even get codeine over the counter. Now that is crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It is absolutely
And
nuts.
it's just codeine. Like it's.
Oh no, it is addictive. It can
It
be.
is. Yeah.
But
Sorry,
at the
it's coming
same
from an
time,
ex-addict, but yes.
but at the same time, it is still a very reasonable, moderate painkiller that the vast majority of adults can use quite responsibly. So why do we have to go and say that to control people's pain relief to that extent means that we now have a society that lives in pain.
But there will be doctors who will prescribe things like oxys constantly to certain people.
Not anymore.
I know people who get them.
Yeah, and
So
those
cluster
doctors-
headaches, people like
Oh,
that.
sorry, there are genuine reasons,
Yeah.
yes. But nowadays, like
Yeah, it's
every
very
script now
hard.
there's no way you can doctor shop now. Every script is monitored now. So, those days are gone where you can like fool the doctors or anything like
There's
that.
a couple of old dudes you can still
Yeah.
get in on.
And
Sorry, we've actually blacked out the power.
that's all right.
Well, I'm
Luckily,
working
I
on
have
it.
an extremely loud voice. Is anyone having any trouble hearing me? No. Oh yeah. Oh well, it was just my. It was my. Yeah, it's my.
Need something to hold. It's a safety net.
Yeah, my safety net. Okay, so let's have a look. So now we've got the same thing as in the ancient civilizations, haven't we? We've got the rich elite. We've got the very conventional sheep-like middle class that don't want to step out, and all they can do is obey the rules now. Have you noticed? Everywhere you go, there is nothing more important than obeying the rules. Have you noticed that? That there's no individuality anymore?
Australians are very good rule followers.
Absolutely, that's
We're
why they
the best.
chose us.
We like to claim that we're not, but we are.
We are, unfortunately.
We are-
I mean, look
we
what
are
we
one
did
of
to
the best.
smokers, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Look at the segregation there. How dare we say that someone's a bad person for smoking cigarettes? Really, think about it.
A good example is during Nazi Germany, right, where all the top brass were on morphine,
Yeah.
heroin. But if you were a drug addict and poor, they'd shoot you. They'd send you off to a camp.
And I think, if we're ever going to change societal attitudes, we've got to stop judging people. We really do. There, for the grace of God, go any of us. And there will be people here that have the same addictive personalities as someone who said they're an ex-addict or something like that. But their thing might be gambling. It might be sex.
Food.
It might be shopping. It might be food. So why do we say that one person is morally wrong and the other one isn't when they are all just habits?
And now there's a movement to be like, oh, it's okay to eat heaps and be overweight. Like that move, you know what I mean? Like there's that movement.
But now we're getting into the woke thing.
Yeah, the woke thing. Let's not go there.
Now I thought, how long have I got left, guys?
Well, it's 11:20.
All day.
Because I'm thinking,
yes.
I might like. Are there any more questions you want to ask about this particular
We've got
topic?
half an hour left.
Oh, okay. So, because I was thinking, because as I say, I usually just talk off the cuff. Hang on, I'll just wait till they rearrange the food.
I just broke the chair.
I don't know how to get hold of
So I normally just talk off the cuff anyway, so me doing a thing, but I just wanted to get a few salient points across though. So anything else that you want to talk about with this whole business about trying to change societal attitudes? I'd love to hear, you know, I've given you my input. What do you think's going to happen, you know?
Australia is so behind the times. We are so behind the times when it comes to this kind of thing.
So how do we change that?
Education.
Education.
But it's like the top brass. They don't. It's like before Labor got in, they're like, oh yeah, we're looking at legalising this, legalising that. As soon as they get in, no, we never said that.
Yes, I mean, I think we've all realised
But
that
politicians are
our
politicians.
governments no longer are there to govern our country, that they're there to serve a global elite. So, you know, the thing is, what we have to do is to start getting people into our parliament that haven't been bought. I mean, and that is the way we're going to start changing anything. And so we really have to start calling politicians out.
Totally.
You know, I mean, it's all very well the Greens being, you know, all for legalising cannabis, but they also upheld vaccine mandates.
They don't go far enough.
You know, like, there is no one to trust.
It's like, okay, the Greens cool, they're up for legalising cannabis, but they have all this other bullshit that I don't agree with at all.
Alright, mate.
So,
And the government has
It's gone.
got an obligation to re-educate the world,
Yeah, I
not
don't
just Australia.
But a lot of the world's
The
kind
war
of,
on drugs and all the old ads.
a lot of the world is doing pretty
My
good.
parents still believe all them TV ads and all that propaganda.
Yeah.
actually, that's a really good
And
point.
that was all based on bullshit.
Yep,
And I think they have an obligation
to correct it.
Yeah.
fix that. And
Australians are very reactive.
Because you know how
Reactive.
I said before, you know, like in the 19th century, when all these drugs were freely available, you could grow what you liked, you could take what you liked, didn't matter. We didn't have the problems with addiction. We didn't have the societal problems apart from alcohol, as usual.
You had a few upper elites on it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, but you get, as soon as the war on drugs started, what happened?
Chaos.
Now we started to get the problems with recreational drugs. The war on drugs created the problem with drugs.
100%.
100%.
Crack cocaine is a huge example.
Most of them are. It's actually quite, you know, when you look at it, it's almost as if it was planned.
It was planned.
Yeah, well.
Well, the
So-
CIA have actually released documents.
Yeah,
So
and
let's
I
not
mean,
get into
and we
that.
all know that's where the phrase conspiracy theorist came from. The CIA after John F. Kennedy's assassination, so that no one would question what happened during that. So that's where conspiracy theory, where that phrase came from. And I like the meme that says there's about 3 months between the conspiracy theory and the truth these days.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So we'll get back onto cannabis though.
Education is going to take too long to re-educate people.
In this country.
So
Definitely.
the fastest way is to legalise the drugs. You know, really, then we can start to educate.
I know everyone gets tired of talking about the Portugal model, but
Get on the
there it
vehicle
is.
and just
Yeah,
smoke
well, it's
weed
not
out
just
the street.
Portugal. Everywhere where they have legalised,
exactly. And
the
drug use
sky
has gone
has
down.
not fallen in.
They get mandated. They can go get government mandated heroin and things like that.
I'm back.
No.
And now I have to talk in a deep, low and salty voice because I've been yelling.
Yeah, and now I can whisper. So I think, that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this talk today, was because I really just wanted to get people to start asking why. Why have we allowed this to happen? Why have we allowed a small group of people to tell us that we have to stay in pain?
They're the most vocal.
You know, so, and to take it right back to why is it wrong? You know, like, no one can really ever answer your question properly, can they? Why is it wrong? Why is it wrong? But as I say, I was thinking, if we're exhausted with that topic, I'm happy just to do a general question and answer thing on anything cannabis. From the seed to the patient, any questions you've got burning at the moment, or if you want to continue this discussion, throw in something and we'll keep talking, whichever you'd like to do. So I thought I'd, just make the last bit, just general education.
I've got a question. Do you?
I thought you would.
Yeah. Do you support legal weed, which obviously comes from somewhere like Canada, or just buying black market locally grown stuff?
I support any cannabis that's organic.
Yeah.
I don't care where it comes from,
Yeah.
as long as it's organic. And
The way I feel
Well,
though
no.
is there's a lot of people around here that have been doing the hard yards for a long time.
I mean, there's a fine line between indoor organic and there's a fine line there between what is chemical and what's not. And I suppose when I say organic, I have no objection to using minerals, as in,
Yeah.
calcium, all the things that are found in nature, even though it's not technically an organic molecule. I don't think if nature uses those things, then I think we can too. As far as, and even for insect control and stuff, I have no objection to using copper. It's a natural
naturally
mineral
occurring
found.
stuff.
Yeah.
If it's naturally occurring,
So-
then there's a use for it.
So you can be organic without being absolutely rabid about it.
Yeah.
And also, we don't know what's on our plants unless they're undercover. Do we?
100%.
So, yes.
The medicinal cannabis is only a small part of the plant, like it's not the whole full plant spectrum. But when people are now getting strips for buds, what's in those buds?
That's the head. That's the flower.
That's the hair. No, but is it has yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
It's the good
that's
stuff.
indoor organic.
Yeah.
It's all indoor organic.
It's what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Overseas, it has to be irradiated. Are you aware of that?
Radiated.
Yes.
Wow.
So if your weed is imported,
Yeah, it's only imports.
it's only imports. Yeah. So if your weed comes from Canada or Israel or something like that, just be aware that it is irradiated. So if you have a real objection to that,
There's too many people around these parts that have been doing the hard yards for so long that they deserve a go.
and this is what I'm so cranky about. I have a friend who, his daughter died without ever getting a legal cannabis product. His other daughter now has epilepsy. He still cannot afford to get a legal cannabis product.
No, well, I went to a doctor
This
to
is-
get legalised, and he said, don't bother, it's too expensive. Plus, the courses the doctors have to do are insane because they have to learn. If you come in with a certain ailment, they have to prescribe a certain weed to you. So there's a whole list. My doctor said it was so confusing I didn't even bother. He's like, just go black market. It's cheaper and it's easier.
Well, now, that's another thing, is that there is a difference between black market and green market. Are you aware of that? Is that the black market I would avoid like the plague.
Well, I use black market
Don't-
interchangeably with green market around here.
Don't, because you don't know what's in it. They use PGA, growth regulators. They use, big time chemicals. They use insecticides because they're just pushing out volume. So you're looking at the black market, the crime.
I'm talking about
stuff.
around here, not Sydney weed.
Oh yeah, you get.
Yeah.
But the green market is something that sprang up several years ago to address the problem of providing people with medical cannabis, and they all strive for good manufacturing practice. They do all strive to grow organically and not adulterate their products.
Lovely to talk
You're
to you.
always-
I've got to go.
Thank you for your input.
Excellent. Anytime.
Give him a clap. So now I can't remember what I was saying. Terrible problem, isn't it? Yes, so for example, the things you get from the hemp embassy, that would be green market. And I don't think enough emphasis is placed on the difference. And so, again, judgment coming into it, they must be terrible, they're growing weed, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, a lot of the green market people are very caring and compassionate people who did do it for nothing. Don't know if that happens much anymore. I think unfortunately corporate greed even extends into Nimbin. But anyway, that's the way it is. So that's something to always think about if you're trying to source you. And also remember, it sometimes is worthwhile going through the legal process so that you have a prescription. If you get pulled over and you have to go to court, if you have a prescription, it will go better for you. So even if you can't afford to buy it, pay the money, do your consult, get your approvals through, have your prescription there, and then if you win lotto, you can go and fill it.
So if I've got, I'm a medical user, if I drive and they want me to do a roadside test, can I refuse that and request the blood test?
No, you get blood
Because
tests.
then I'm still in level of what my doctor says.
You get blood tested and then you'll be guaranteed to get a positive result.
Well, I'm going to, but I'm allowed to use a certain amount of my blood level.
Lipsticks aren't
yeah.
really...
And I would say that these days, especially if you've got a legal prescription, they're just going to throw it out for you.
Because I carry my driver.
You know, it really has moved to the point they're going to have to change those laws soon. Because again, call out the hypocrisy. You can drive on benzos, you can drive on narcotics, all far more impairing than cannabis is for your driving. But gee, we're allowed to be responsible adults and decide. But not with cannabis. Somehow we are magically turned into adults that cannot make any decisions for ourselves. So really we are starting to see the things changing a little bit. And this driving thing is just getting ridiculous. And all I've been able to say to people is you've got to, it's your choice to take the risk or not. You know.
But
And
to be fair, you're better off taking the tongue swab because they're not very accurate anyways. And apple cider vinegar and mouse.
I carry that mouthful away.
Hydro peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide.
well,
Just
Just had an apple pop juice bottle in my car with vinegar in it.
now I'd like to see a study done on this, guys.
everyone has
Okay, thank you. Because I drive, I'm going to use this one.
I don't think anything is very accurate.
taking a tongue swab over
So you reckon because I'm moving away,
I've lost control of the room. Come back to me, guys.
Now what's going on in about 3-4 minutes?
Yeah, we've coped. We've coped.
If you learn to become a living man and woman, you can actually refuse the saliva test as a living man and woman because you're not contracting with the corporation of the police. And
I know, but unfortunately, like the police
we still have to start doing that though. You still have to start standing around as a
yes,
living man.
like the whole thing. We know that Australia's a corporation and everything's all illegal and everything, but until we get rid of the judiciary that's corrupt, there's not a lot we can do about it. I mean, when the corruption reaches to the Supreme Court, we're fucked. Like really, we're looking at assassination. Basically, no, I didn't say that. Oh, I'm still talking in the mic. I don't know why I'm doing that. I'll put it down. I'll actually stop using it as that. Any more questions? Anything about growing, treating diseases like... Sorry? The easiest way is to bring up one of the cannabis clinics. Yep, you don't have to go and see anyone. Yeah, there's many different ones. They don't care about you. But if you want your prescription, that's the simplest way to do it. And there's most indications, like we're not for cancer. So just don't say it's for cancer. The others than that, basically anxiety. I must admit, Queensland did very well in these we could have had a lot of restrictions on medications, and that hasn't happened. There's not too many restrictions in there. So Queensland lucky. We also got both. We were the ones that got both for people too in Queensland, and then in other states. And so we're starting to realise, aren't we, that all these recreational drugs are actually useful medicines. So why are they keeping them from us? Why are we not allowed to be responsible for our own medicines, even if they're addictive? It can be done. Like, I think my husband tells a story of the drunk chef, or was he a chef, or just a roustabout or something? Anyway, they'd get 3-6 months work out of him. He'd get paid, go to town, go on a vendor. He'd come back, they'd dry him out for a few days, and they'd get another 6 months work out of him. And now, okay, he was a really bad alcoholic, but he managed a lot. He managed to be a respected working member of that team. And they accepted him for what he was. Okay, let him go to town and waste all his money. He'll never have anything, but that's him. But he's good to us, you know, works for us when he's dry. So they used to look after him and dry him out and back to work. And I have a friend of mine who's a meth addict. And so he took a job as chef out in a remote place. So it got him away from it. And so he'd only ever go back onto the meth, like if he came back into town and go on a bit of a bender and then go back out. So there's ways of managing it. That's just two very simple examples, you know, of my own experience of people that I know I've heard of. But there's lots and lots of ways of managing addiction without punishing people for it. You know, without making them feel like they're some sort of, you know, boil on the surface of humanity. You know, when the alcoholics are freaking lauded for what they do. And you're thinking, you know, there's something really wrong about the way we view it. And so that's what I wanted to do today, was to try and get you start thinking about why all this has come about and how we can change it. And that's the really hard part, because we have to change the government, and then we have to change the way that these things are viewed by people. And while we still treat smokers the way we do, we're never going to get there. Look what we did during COVID. Whoa, we were happy to segregate, weren't we? Vaccine, non-vaccinated? Whoa, like that. Smokers, still, even now, you'll say, oh, well, you shouldn't be smoking, you're this and you're that for smoking. Huh? Like...
They raid the chop shops, at least that's better for
Hey,
the real...
I know, isn't it fucking brilliant now? Like, you can get chop anywhere. You just go in and ask for cheap tobacco. You'll pay from $40 to $80 for 100 grams, and it's not adulterated. And the federal police just go and raid them every now and again. They pay their fine and set up again. So if any of the cigarette smokers here, I'm just giving a little heads up. It's especially if the skin colour is slightly dark. So that's so you know, and to me, and I reckon that's made a huge difference to me. Just, you know, not having to. And when you look at the commercial tobacco and you compare the two, and there's all these little black specks.
Testing, we're back on power.
Ah, okay.
And this time we will not be deprived.
Yeah, as I have such a loud voice, it doesn't really impact anyway. Yeah, so any more questions? I can't think of anything. So what are you guys?
Oh, we're from Perth, we just thought we were in the same shirts.
Ah, okay, so you're visiting from Perth. What are your laws over there, just out of curiosity?
It's draconian.
Yeah, so do you have any legal cannabis at all?
Yeah, we can get it
Medical.
Yeah, we have nothing else but cannabis. I mean, ACT's the only one that's got anything. And gee, the sky fell in there too, didn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's even aware that it's actually legal, you know. So this is the sort of thing that we're up against. And you know, when I look back, I mean, we started this in about 2014. 2015, when my son and I, Joshua was the main contender, I just helped him. That's when we did and we even called it marijuana back then, because it was right at the beginning. We did the medical marijuana march for the sick and dying, and we did that in Brisbane. That's still the biggest march there ever was in Australia for cannabis, by the way. And that, you know, and I can remember Alex Wodak, you know, the doctor from Sydney. And we were all excited, saying, hey, you know, yeah, we're going to do this, you know, this is it. You know, we've got the proof now. There's all this research, blah. And he said, no. He said, no, I wouldn't hold your breath. He said, it's still many, many years away. And we were all so depressed by that, like, you know, but he was right. Here we are, nearly 10 years later, and we've only just got medical. You know, so this is what we're up against. It's just been such a long fight. And to have it handed over to corporate cannabis right at the outset was just devastating. Just devastating. I mean, the models that we wanted to put forward allowed things like boutique strains, dispensaries, so that there was room for the small players as well. A 3 strikes and you're out rule. So if you want to go and doing something illegal with your cannabis, with the generous laws that you have for your cannabis, if you still want to do the wrong thing, 3 strikes and it's jail time or hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. Because it's only the black market that would do it then, wouldn't it? It's only the black market that would bother. If the laws were generous enough, then there's no need to break the law. And this is what I suppose all of us activists have been trying to say, is it's a bad law. And we, who was the guy who said that, it's our responsibility not to obey bad laws. That excuse hasn't worked real well for me in the past, but it still doesn't make it any less true. Is that we should not be obeying bad laws. And we should be, we should be out on the streets. But I think it's a different world we're in now. COVID has changed a lot of things. And so I think a lot of people have just been taking stock over the last couple of years and sorting out, what their lives are going to be. Because, there's terrible things coming. And we all have to be strong enough to get through it. But I reckon we're on the right track because, you are all here because you believe that nature is the better way to go. And that and you believe that, you should not be controlled as to what you put into your body. And that's what it was all about with that COVID thing, wasn't it? It was losing the right to control what you put into your body. And I've been screaming that for many years.
A bit off topic, but did you see some US states are making it illegal to donate blood if you have the vaccine?
Gee, I knew that right from the word go. That I thought, oh my God, that they're not even noting if someone's vaccinated or not. This is going to cause a huge problem. I don't know about you. There's no way I would take donated blood. Anymore. No, I do an autologous. Yeah. Well, I don't want to segregate. You know what I mean? And besides, they don't know. They didn't. They never said. They didn't take that information down. So there's no way they'll ever know until they see the little bits of graphene oxide under the microscope. But this is the situation that we're in now, and it's a very different world for healthcare that we're looking at now too. We do have to take charge of our own health and use nature because I'm also a herbalist, and so I'll just do a little plug. I'm also ADD, so once I get it together and get my stall set up, I've actually got heaps of herbs and plants and seeds and something like that. I've even got some poppy seeds, which are more expensive than the other ones. Okay? I had a very successful spring garden last year. Out in the front yard. Do things in plain sight, people don't even notice, do they? That's how stupid the laws are. That's how stupid the laws are. You can grow poppies in your front yard and they think they're just poppies. But anyway, but that was just an experiment that worked really well. So other people may be able to benefit. Because I honestly believe that even when it comes to something with narcotics, opium as a whole plant medicine has got to be better than all the extracts. So perhaps opium is not quite as addictive as what all the other ones are. And if people could go back to taking laudanum, it might not be as much of a problem. Certainly it will be. It's still a physically addictive drug and all that, and if you're one of the 8 to 10%, then you'll have a problem with it. But, we need to get back to nature and treating things. And truly, the best things to fight any vaccine damage are what you find in nature. And I've also got a bit of information about that too. If anyone, if anyone doesn't know how to get onto alternative media and how to look up these things, you can always stop and have a chat when I get my store. I'm going to see if I can have that spot down there like I had last year. So I haven't asked yet, but I think Michael will let me. Any last questions before we close? Did you find it interesting?
Yes.
So, like that, you know, because I don't think I've heard this topic discussed as much before. And as I said, I just thought it was, you know, I've had a bit of a struggle with things like that lately, and I thought, well, you know, I'm just really sick of, you know, that, you know, being a doctor and I still can't control my own pain relief. It's, yes, yeah, and that's it. It does make you feel like a criminal from cannabis onwards, you know. You're not made to feel like a criminal with alcohol, are you? You know, and I haven't even mentioned tobacco. I don't think I'll even go there, but that's apart from segregating the smokers. But you're looking at bad laws. I mean, the smoking laws, you are not allowed to know how much nicotine is in your cigarette. And yet, we have another law that says that it is illegal not to state how much of an active ingredient is in a product. So we have laws that contradict each other. We have a law that's based on a truism. You know, when you say that the converse of a statement is true. Because you can't smoke where people are eating, therefore you can't eat where people are smoking. Now, how ridiculous is that? That's a truism. They made a law out of it. And this is, I mean, smoking in the open air. How can that be anything except judgment and moral? Like, that is nothing to do with passive smoking. Isn't that the reason we have the anti-smoking laws, is to prevent passive smoking? Is there any other thing? No. So why do we stop people from smoking in the open air? Because we have judged them. They are putting a bad example to our children. I used to hang over the school fence and smoke. Because I thought, it's just so ridiculous. You know, do not legislate people being role models. You do not pass a piece of legislation because you're a bad role model. And that's what they've done with smoking, because it's all judgment apart from, you know, in a building and 4 metres from the doorway. Every other law should not even exist as far as smoking is concerned. But it was a very good trial, wasn't it, to see how we go. And you know, I've even found out recently, oh not recently, but I found out more about it recently, is that nicotine is protective against spike protein damage. So, there was another agenda for demonising smoking. It's because us smokers have been accidentally doing the right thing. So, and it makes you wonder if the damage from Chop Chop is anywhere near the damage from commercial tobacco. So what's causing all the problems with tobacco? Is it really the tobacco, or is it what they've put in it? So, even nicotine is not as bad as what they made it out to be. And it even has a protective role, so there you go.
So there's vaccine damaged people who can't breathe. If you put a nicotine patch on them, they won't be able to breathe.
And the strange thing is that nicotine's actually a vasoconstrictor. So you would think, oh, you know, that wouldn't work, but there you go. But, I mean, they call it nicotine because it acts directly on the nicotinic receptor. I don't know which one came first. But yeah, so that's why they call it that. The muscarinic receptor is named after the one that's mescaline or whatever. So I'm not as good on psychedelics, must admit. Not that I don't agree with them. I think you know, the microdosing for pain, I think that's a brilliant thing. All the psychological and psychiatric ways it can be used, you know. So I think, you know, I just wish, I haven't had time to get into it more. I'd really love to get into it more. I've covered most of the plant kingdom, just haven't quite got to fungi yet, but we'll get there. So I think we'll probably, you know, wrap it up there. I think I'd like you all to go home and think about, you know, how can we change people judging other people, you know, or should we all wear a little sign that says Karen? No Karens here, I hope. Hey, I'm a Debbie, we got flack too. Debbie does Dallas, down the Debbie, you know. I think the Karens can just cop it. Did you want to have another question? No. And you're right, you want to kick me off?
No.
Oh, yeah.
We're gone. Okay. Yes.
One thought. When we're steering a conversation against people that want to attack us, I found it very effective to speak about the medicinal properties rather than anything to do with recreational anything. there's this person who has a shaking issue that Western medicine calls epilepsy. This medicine in this form and blah, blah, blah is helping them. They relate to that and it cuts through the judgment because it's their friend, their daughter, their uncle. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
If we mix it together, it just sounds like we're all woo, and that's just not true.
And yeah, and I think that's, you know, that's really true, is that, yeah, it is a great way to introduce the subject. But I would go further then, and once you've sort of got them hooked on that, and then you introduce the concept of, well, maybe all recreational drug use is medicinal. If you look upon it as relaxation is a type of therapy, and, you know, so, like, so there's ways that you can make people look at it. I mean, and I think it is, and that's where it is a great place to start with all of the drugs, not just cannabis, because they all have really useful medical uses, all of them. So, I mean, that's, you know, I have to say, that's why they were banned. For no other reason is that they're a means of controlling people. That's the only reason. Because I've looked through everything.
Because
and
we could be just too healthy and then we can't buy any of their drugs.
yes, that's exactly right. It's amazing, I have a lot of structural problems from after the cancer and all the drugs they gave me. But homeostatically and biochemically, I'm great. And I would have to put that down to my herbal medicine and cannabis, which is herbal medicine too. And so thank you very much, and I may see some of you at the tent when it exists, and other than that I'll see you next year. Oh, and I'd love to see you guys back next year. It'd be great.
Bravo! Keep the planet green, bro. Thank you, Dave.
Enjoy your stay.